Enjoyed having Steve in my class this year, except when he makes fun of the way I say bang bang bar. Bang bang, bang bang. Bang bang, bang bang,
Bang bang.
bang bang. Yeah, so this is Steve. This is what he says. He says, I would like to thank Mr. Wade for his guidance and patience throughout this whole thesis process, Miss Amanda for her support and my advisor, my parents for their constant encouragement, and lastly, my friends who are there supporting me. All right, Steve's thesis is entitled, Don't Call Me Daddy, Why We Should Cultivate a Positive Perspective of Child-Free Individuals. Give me a chance to set up the timer. I'll let you know when you can start. All right, you can start when you're ready.
Samantha, a 35-year-old graphic designer, was looking forward to going to her friend Rachel's dinner party since it has been a while since she had seen her friends from college. As the night continued, Samantha found herself in a very common situation. As her friends joined her at the table, the topic of discussion turned into children. Rachel was sharing humorous stories of her daughter's tantrum, while her other friend, Mark, was showing pictures of his daughter's first soccer match. The topic of discussion continued to spiral down around children until Mark turned to Samantha and asked, So, when are you going to have kids? Samantha nervously replies, Oh, I'm not going to have kids. The room fell silent for a moment until someone was able to force in a laugh. You'll change your mind. Everyone does. Wouldn't you regret it afterwards? What happens when you get old? Wouldn't you have no one to look after you? Samantha felt the familiar sting of frustration. However, she responded, I've thought about it a lot. However, I'm satisfied with the way things are. However, the responses continue to roll in. Sayings about selfish and legacy continues to roll in. At the end of the evening, Samantha couldn't help but feel exhausted. Although she knew that her friends were just sticking her with sticks of curiosity, she couldn't help but feel judged for her decision. This isn't the first time she'd hear this comment, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. Within most culture, being child-free is often met with skepticism, judgment, or even outright disapproval. The term child-free was first used by the National Organization in 1972 for people or couple who choose not to have children for various of reasons. However, despite the increasing awareness of different family structures and alternative lifestyles, being child-free continues to be stigmatized and by many regarded as negative. Research indicated that such stigma rely on cultural norms that view parenthood as a moral responsibility and a marker of personal fulfillment. Such negative views as well come from the pronatalist values that views parenthood as a height of a successful life. These values also are reinforced by traditional gender role perceiving childcare as a core part of a woman's identity and instill societal pressure upon men. Child-free individuals are stereotypically assumed to be childish, selfish, or even deviant. However, these biases fail to consider the decision behind the child-free motive, which can range from personal aspiration, career implications, financial, ecological, or simply not wanting to have any kids. This growing issue can be seen from two perspectives. The first perspective values cultural tradition, which sees parenthood and having children as a mandatory family duty, while the second one values personal autonomy, seeing child-free as a respectable decision any family will ever make. With that, society should cultivate an accepting attitude toward the child-free individuals for three main reasons. First, the variety of valid reasons that stands behind it. Second, the biological factors that are in play. And third, ethical and moral obligation to do so. First, couples choose the child-free lifestyles because of a variety of reasons, which includes personal values, financial implication, and ecological concerns. Every child-free person has a different story to tell. Acknowledging this motive will instill respect and empathy in the society. A diverse community will result in a culture that embraces all paths free of judgment and stigmas. Some people choose to be child-free because it contradicts their life values and objectives. Some people might think that their career, education, and personal life more important than having children. Studies show that child-free people typically enjoy the freedom of being able to pursue their passion without constraints. This option signifies a person's ability to commit to their own values instead of following what society expected. Parents choosing to remain child-free often do so because of their career alignment that deem them unnecessary and having hard time to cope with it. Professions such as medicine, law, and corporate leaders are very time-consuming, which as a result may render parenting incompatible with career ambitions. When we understand the reason behind the child-free decision, society will understand that fulfillment can come from any avenue and not necessarily from children. Having a child is one of the most significant decisions any family will ever make. This decision is associated with the responsibilities, especially the need to provide the children with attention and care for its proper growth. It is better not to have any children than to raise them up in an environment in which they cannot receive the most basic form of support. Without proper nurture, children may develop forms of aggression or withdrawal. Such behaviors may interfere them with forming healthy relationships and academic progress. Having a child should not be about making personal fulfillment, however, making a lifelong commitment to another person's well-being. The second motive for staying child-free is financial stability. Raising a child, which includes educational costs, healthcare costs, or even general living costs, can be overwhelming, especially for those families that come from the lower middle income. As a result, the child-free option enables couples from the family to allocate their resources for other uses, such as investing, personal development, or even enhancing their quality of life. In Japan, where the cost of living is generally high for families, evaluating whether one is capable or not to provide the essential care and nurture for a child is crucial. Estimated put into cost that the monthly cost of an average family of four in Japan will take about 600,000 yen, excluding rent. However, the average salary of a single person in Japan is about 437,000 yen. This must mean that family must work hard to meet, living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck to avoid their family's essential necessities. Furthermore, income instability disrupts healthy child development through a disturbance in parenting behavior and also constricting resources. For instance, parents facing income instability will find it hard and difficult to provide their sons or daughters with the crucial educational resources and meals. As a result, this may disrupt their child academics progress and also lessen the possibility for the child to have an upward mobility. As a result, this will perpetuate a wheel of poverty that can spin for generations. Next, environmental consideration plays as a third factor in the decision to become child-free or not. Concerns over issues like overpopulation, resource depletion, and even climate change can make the decision for people to eschew parenthood. These views come from the increasing awareness of the future of the planet and its habitability for the future generation. Research indicates that having one fewer children can significantly reduce a family's carbon footprint by approximately 58.6 metric tons of carbon dioxide annually in a high-income country. This itself is 50 times better than eating a plant-based diet, recycling, or even not using a dryer. As a conclusion, the child-free lifestyle will enable people to elevate pressures on the society by lowering the demand for natural resources such as water, food, energy, and electricity. The child-free decision is a personal choice and a pledge toward the planet. It addresses growing environmental concern by reducing the carbon footprint, conserving natural resources, minimizing waste production, and also reduces resource consumption. As for my second claim, individuals do not have the capacity to have or to raise children. Conditions such as biological suitability, health factor, or even mental suitability plays pivotal roles. If these conditions are not met, it will mean that not all humans are fitted to take on the responsibilities of parenthood. Thus, having a child should not be forced. An individual's reproductive success varies from people to people according to their biological and genetic factors. For females, factors such as lactation time and gestation time place constraints on producing offspring, while for male, qualities such as sperm quality and also genetic compatibility plays a role. The incapability of pregnancy is a naturally occurring phenomenon due to the biological, genetic, or even health-related factors. Understanding these puts into perspective that having a child or not having a child is a normal part of the human experience. Following biological factors are the importance of physical health towards the child-free decision. A trend of delayed marriage and a delayed pregnancy supports the issue of old age pregnancy. Mothers over the age of 35 poses risk for both the parents and the fetus. Older mothers are more susceptible to high blood pressures and a condition called preeclampsia, which reduces blood flows towards the fetus and which can increase risk later in life. Furthermore, individuals with mental conditions may not be suited to have children. Children nurtured by a parent with mental illness are at risk for social, emotional, and behavioral issues. Conditions like depression, anxiety, and personality disorder can impact one's capability to provide a nurturing care for their children. Children exposed to these poor parental mental health are at greater risk for developing long-term issues. Ultimately, a nurturing family environment is required for a child's development. It is better to be child-free when the parent is not mentally suited to have a child. Having a child, again, should not be about fulfilling personal desire, but making and embracing a lifelong commitment and responsibility for another person's life. As for the following claim, we should cultivate a positive and accepting attitude towards child-free people because it is ethically and morally right. The child-free lifestyles give unique insights and critical debates over issues and instill tolerance and empathy in the society. Respecting diversity enables society to gain a wider scope of different experience and ideas. Not to mention, a key component of the human right is personal autonomy, which allows people to make their own decision regarding their own life. Acknowledging other people's choices is recognizing their rights. Just like being single or to travel, the decision of being child-free should be respected by all people. The idea of free will itself is predicated on the knowledge that God endowed man the capability of making the decision for themselves. God granted personal autonomy, making them able to choose, including to be child-free. Respecting the child-free choice, we affirm their right to choose and to live without judgment or stigma. The child-free lifestyle gives a different point of view towards life that society can benefit from. The child-free lifestyles bring a perspective of prioritizing personal autonomy. This allows them more time and resources for personal development. Such life lessons from child-free individuals can help people understand what gives value to their lives outside of parenthood and children. Even though child-free individuals have different notions in life, they still deserve to be respected for their mental health, being, and well-being. Picture this, bringing your own delicious dish to a potluck, only to be criticized for not bringing the right amount of dish. Even though you're happy, people still judge you, even though there's still too much food for people to mind. This scenario depicts the child-free lives and also the discrimination that comes along with it. In brief, respect towards the child-free individuals is important for their mental well-being. Negative perception leads to isolation, while acceptance leads to everyone's option being valued. As the world continues at a developing pace, it's groundbreaking. The demand for the workforce industry grows exponentially. In regards to this, the growth of child-free individuals has opened up debates on all its issues and impact on the workforce industry. People argue that a higher percentage of child-free individuals will result in a smaller population and also ultimately result in a decrease in labor force. To begin with, the concern that more child-free individuals leads to a population decline and a smaller workforce ignores the possibility of economic resilience. While a lower birth rate presents challenges, assuming it causes a shortage of workers, it overlooks automation and a more skilled labor force. Japan, facing a labor shortage, has seen its population shrink for about 13 years and expected that its workforce to drop about 12% between 2022 and 2040. And Japan itself is experiencing at about 11 million workers in shortfall. However, Japan's solution has revolutionized the country. Industries are turning into automation to solve the decreasing labor force. An example, self-service counters has been implemented by Family Mart to maximize efficiency and minimize staffing. Second, the argument that child-free existence leads to a difficult old age only paints half the picture. Though children often help with aging parents, this is not the only way to support old age. Not all children can provide the parents and care due to finance, distance, or even personal obligations. In Switzerland, care systems are changing because many people do not have children or children who cannot take care of their children, with the addition that some parents do not want to burden their children. As an outcome of child-free, individuals are more financially independent, having avoided child-rearing costs. They can invest more in retirement, healthcare, and long-term care and insurances. To suggest that child-free life leads to unhappy old age is a reductionism that undermines the ability of human resilience. Third, some quote Genesis 1 verse 28, "Be fruitful to multiply," as an argument to go against child-free. However, this overlooks biblical interpretation and the diversity of Christian views. The verse was given on a context of populating an empty earth. It ignores other verses based on love, justice, and other qualities. The problem today is no longer about fulfilling an empty earth. The world today is not empty. Instead, the problem should be about caring for its existing people. The Bible indicates individuals who didn't have any children and still serve God. Paul, for instance, encouraged singleness as a way to focus on God's calling. The biblical support for singleness shows indirectly that having a child is not prioritized. Whether to have children or not is a personal decision that is guided by prayer and a decision to honor God. Throughout this thesis, we have discussed the reasons why society should cultivate an accepting attitudes toward the child-free individuals, from the variety of reasons that play to the biological factors and also the moral and ethical obligation to do so. The reason mentioned above demonstrate that the child-free decision is a deeply personal choice based on a multifaceted motivations of an individual's values, career, economics, and evaluation of one's parental capability. To judge or to stigmatize this is to undermine people's personal autonomy. Now, to finish, let's get back to the story of Samantha. Later that evening, she cannot avoid the familiar pattern of judgment. Those sayings about selfishness, legacy, or even being childish still echoes hours later. However, Samantha was well aware that her decision towards to become child-free was not made lightly, but was made with careful consideration of what was most important to her. At the end, her frustration was not about her decision towards child-free, but about the societal judgment that deemed her as selfish because of her decision. Samantha's experience is a representative of the challenges faced by child-free individuals who live in a society that sees having a child is a good way to live. As a result, such judgment does not only exclude child-free individuals, but it also encourages harmful stereotypes that undermine personal autonomy and the diversity in lifestyle. Samantha's story tells us that all options towards a good life is valid. As a parent can find value and happiness in having a child, so can child-free families can find it as well. They can have equally rich lives as a family who have children. Samantha's experience reminds us to question those pre-existing assumptions and to be more open-minded. Finally then, this thesis is a call for tolerance and empathy. It is a call to look beyond traditional expectation and to be more open to a wider scope of different human experience. People should not cultivate a negative attitude towards the child-free individuals. Instead, we should strive for a world in which the child-free decision is respected. We should strive for a world in which every decision is expected and mattered despite the judgment and stigma. By fostering a society of compassion and tolerance, we can make our world a more fair and compassionate for all people regardless of their reproductive choices. Let us then pledge to question those assumptions and to strive for a deeper understanding of the child-free motive. Thank you.
Good job, Steve. Sorry if my phone disturbed you. Somebody thought I was supposed to be in a meeting right now. So our panelists today are, you did a good job though getting through my attempt at distraction. Our panelists today are Mr. Zoran and Ms. Regina. I'll let Ms. Regina go first.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wade. Okay, Steve, I would like to appreciate your efforts in presenting your thesis. You did a very well job, and then you did it very quite smoothly. Yeah. Okay, this is a very interesting topic. Yeah, especially since you also what I heard, Since you also took the same topic for Karya Ilmiah.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
okay. Now I wonder, why did you choose this topic?
Thank you for the question. I choose this topic because it's become more relatable, especially as I realized that everything around us is more expensive. I came to wonder how parents can typically afford life, and it makes me wonder about my future.
Okay, it's from your personal experience, yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. The next questions, I understand the purpose of your thesis, that we need to have an accepting attitude toward people who choose not to have children or choose the child-free lifestyle.
Yes.
Yeah. I also understand that are some families who are not blessed with children. There are also some health reasons that do not allow them to have children. Even Christian also have decision not to have children because they have a calling from God.
Yes.
Yeah, and then for God's purpose. All those reasons are understandable. However, in your writing, there are several other reasons related to financial stability
Yes.
and about people's values and life goals, where they consider career, education, and personal life, including traveling, more important than having children. Yeah. This explanation given conveys the message that having children is a burden, and not having children will lead to happiness and fulfillment. Now, how do we respond to the child-free view? Yeah, when God's word says otherwise, that children are a blessing from God that brings happiness and fulfillment, especially when this view is starting to enter into Christians or church.
Thank you for pointing that out. To answer that question, we first need to see that the child-free decision should be made responsibly and with wisdom. It evaluates whether they can properly raise that blessing. For me, it is important to think of our own capability to raise the God-given blessing. For it is better to raise it properly rather than to waste God's gift towards us. And also, there's a biblical verse in Luke 14, verse 21. It says that it tells the story about how a person who wanted to build a tower should also acknowledge the cost behind it first before building the tower.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Okay, so for the next questions, yeah. The cultural mandate for God for humans is to multiply and fill the earth. Actually, you already mentioned it in your
Yes.
paper, in your writing. Yeah. That is God's original design for man, written in the Bible, without any end, or there is no expire. Yeah, you mentioned it's because it is overpopulated. Yeah, but the Bible says there is no end or no expires. Yeah, expiration. Okay. Also, when studying deeper, where man received the consequences of natural sin, he has an unavoidable responsibility to overcome difficulties and hardship in life. So, by having a view on child-free, aren't we going against God's original design and running away from the responsibility that has been given to us? How do we know that deciding to be child-free is in accordance with God's will and not just to avoid the responsibilities and hardship of life?
Thank you for pointing that out. But first, I want to mention that in Genesis 1, verse 28, this verse only tells us that this verse is not a command. It is not like the Ten Commandments, which is very certain of its objectivity, such as do not kill or do not murder. But this verse does not imply that we should or should not have children, but it's just a saying. And then secondly, can you repeat the second question?
Okay. Okay, how do we know that deciding to be child-free is in accordance with God's will and not just to avoid the responsibilities and hardship of life?
Thank you for repeating it. So to know whether the child-free choice is aligned with God's will in us, it is also mentioned in my thesis that to have a children or not is a personal decision guided by prayer and also a desire to honor God. We should also understand the context behind the child-free choice. if it's a responsible decision or not. And again, at the end, the decision to be child-free or not relies back on the people.
Okay, so the conclusion, is it against God's will?
No, it's not against God's will.
Okay. Okay. Okay, next question. You explain in your refutation that not having children can save the Earth's future. Is that right? Not having children can save the Earth's future?
In
Because-
which part?
The refutation?
The first one is about in my refutation. The first one is about the decreasing workforce. The second one is about the old age, and the third one is about the biblical stance towards it.
Oh, okay, okay.
I think it's in the proof.
In the proof, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain, would that be the primary solution? Maybe if you think 20 to 30 years, or maybe 10 to 30 years from now, where many people have this view, yeah, what would be the negative impacts of implementing the child-free lifestyle?
I think it is not one of the primary solutions, since again it is a lifestyle only. I think for me the primary solution could be back to the government, in which they can implement more rules and more actions towards environmental concerns. And secondly, the child-free lifestyles again is not forced upon people, so people will have their own decision regarding to it.
Okay.
Okay, it's about time for
Yeah.
Mr. Zoran.
Thank you for your answers.
Okay, thank you, Steve, for your presentation. I do have some questions, and because I did come from Natasha's thesis, it will be correlated to Natasha's. So yeah, I agree. I mean, marrying is hard, difficult, like, and not just that. After marriage, having kids and all that stuff within is also hard and difficult. Yeah, and we do see a lot of families, Christian families, having kids, and there are difficulties. It's a reality, right? Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, they can pray to God, but yeah, it's case by case, yeah.
Yes.
But then you also say that it's a positive perspective, as if it's encouraged to everyone. Is that what you want? So that when I have a family, I should not have kids? Is that what you want to say to me?
Thank you for pointing that out. But in terms of my title, by what I mean by positive is more towards the accepting side of it. Since this topic is about how individuals should cultivate positive accepting attitude toward the child-free individuals, it's more to of our view as a third person outside of it towards people who take on the child-free lifestyle.
Yeah, but in your thesis, you say it's ethical and moral. As far as I know, it means it's prescriptive. It is encouraged. In fact, everyone should follow that.
No,
At least when that's your thesis. Thank you.
I think what I meant is that everyone is encouraged to have the positive attitudes towards those who take on the child-free lifestyle.
Okay, and as I do prefer if you make it more of a neutral tone,
Yeah.
neutral perspective.
And I think there's a little bit of a mistake. I changed the title, and I think it's not updated.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Right. Yeah, and I agree with some of the points that you put in your paper, in your thesis, but after some of the points seems to be a bit overbulk, there's some redundancy and all that. So I want to clarify with you being here about autonomy and free will. Yeah,
Yes.
You mentioned a lot about it, but I don't see the nuance. I mean, yeah, God gave us freedom and God gave us the capacity to do a lot of things. But like what Mr. Mano said earlier, I mean, are we a smart nation? And Helen said, yeah, we have potential. And look at this earth. Yeah, not just this nation. We have so many bad things, right? So
Yes.
why does giving us freedom is a good idea, right?
I think for me, thank you for pointing that out, but giving us freedom, especially out of the child-free responsibilities, enables people to focusing on themselves, through personal development, career, or education. As a result, it can also benefit the country since there will be a more skilled labor force.
Okay, now good answer. Now go through my next question. It has to do with a country and economy. You said that having a married couples without children is good workforce, and I don't know, when I listen or read your thesis, some of the statements are a bit, I don't know, problematic. Yeah, let me just account for that. Yeah. This account for the fact that the child-free workers are able to work additional hours and take on more responsibilities. Ultimately, the child-free lifestyle should not be seen as a stumbling block, but as a stepping stone that pushes humanity ahead. Like,
Yes.
wow. So it means that if I work more hours, it's good for the economy. But I kind of like see this as like a capitalist utopia, but a worker's hell, you know? Like, instead of going home and seeing my children, I work, work, and work. So what kind of government that you're trying to make here? Can you maybe elaborate more on that?
I think, thank you for pointing that out. But as you said earlier, when people work more hours, they put more work into their jobs, which means that automatically the business or the economy could also grow. However, it does poses questions about the government, especially if it encourages its people to work more harder and harder. It raises more moral questions regarding to it. So I think if that happens, I think it leans towards the capitalistic side of a government.
And the way I see it, your thesis encourage that. You said that, well, the people can be more replaced with robots. Like, I don't know, imagine that you go to Japan.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing all the matcha, you know, ceremonial grade matcha and all that, you're seeing robots.
Yes.
How's that for Japan? You know, instead of seeing happy people with happy smiles, you know, we're designed to see smiles, yeah. We're not designed to see screens and robots and all that. So how is that a good thing for the world if I see more robots?
I think, thank you for pointing that out. It's a good way to see, it is a good way to see more robots because other people can also focus on other aspects of their life instead of just working. For example, pursuing their passions instead. Because as I mentioned earlier, in Japan, the living expenses could be very expensive, and sometimes people couldn't pursue their passion due to the financial implication. So as a result, they must force themselves to work upon those jobs. But through the usage of robots, it allows people to do other jobs and their passions.
Okay, I just think you need to maybe put in more nuance because I have to say I think that method might not work for Indonesia, for example.
Yeah.
We just have too many people.
Yes.
Like, my next question is more maybe philosophical, ontological. Yeah. So here's the thing, Steve. In another world, in another universe, your parents over there in the back choose themselves. You're not here. Your siblings are not here as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're gone. I don't even know that Steve and all that. Yeah. And there is a life without Steve. You know, the universe has no one named Steve, right? Do you think that you add a value to this world when you are here?
Thank you for pointing that out. But if we see it as in a Christian perspective, yes, we are very valued, especially in the eyes of God. If God placed me here, it means that God have a mission for me, and I need to do it.
Very good answer. Yeah, I do actually need more nuance. The way I say it, I think some families should have kids, but some might not should have kids. You know,
Yeah.
with that. And yeah, this world needs you in it because you speak this thesis for me and for us. Thank you. I think that's it for me. Mr. Wade, yeah.
Okay, there's several questions that I guess most of your peers have looked at a couple of different angles. One was the biblical worldview, and I think you've talked a lot about that. But what about, there's some countries in Asia, like South Korea, who, where they have declining birth rates, right?
Yes.
And maybe because a lot of people are taking on this attitude.
Yes.
What do you say to them? Is there a point where we need to promote having children, and maybe the child-free lifestyle is not helping the country?
Thank you for the question, and I would like to answer that question with a real-life example that happens in Japan. Japan as well has faced decreasing amount of people because of the child-free decision. However, because of this, government has implemented rules and incentive to raise children. For example, government has provided about 500,000 yen on hospital bills for people who who have child, and also government has also give monthly allowances to families who have child.
Okay.
Thank you.
And would you, so I know, a part of the discussion you had with our panelists is that your thesis is really about the third person perspective.
Yes.
Yet a lot of what you're saying almost sounds like you're saying that we should, you're promoting it. You're promoting not having children. What would you, and maybe you've answered this kind of already, but what would you say to that person who says, you just told me that that if we want to save the planet, we should not have children. And, if a couple of people do that, it's one thing, but are you really going to save the planet? Are you pushing are you pushing being child-free to save the planet?
Thank you for the question, but I think that for us to cultivate an accepting attitude towards it is to firstly place ourselves on the shoes of their people. We should understand what they are going through instead of just judging them from the outside perspective. So by putting ourselves into their shoes, we can also understand what they're going through, what they're experiencing, or what they're feeling. So we can understand them better. And secondly, to mention that by having no child, it could save the planet it's not really good, since there's also other solutions to it. And having no child is one of the ways people can contribute to saving the planet.
Okay. And would you also extend that argument to just being married? Like, is it okay not to be married, or just singleness? Because in some ways, your arguments sound a whole lot like the stigma attached to being single. Is it the same thing, or is there a difference?
I think there is a difference, especially since maybe some people just wanted to marry for the presence of another lover. However, being singleness and also marriage is different as well.
Okay. Steve, do you plan on having children?
I do not have the capability to think that far yet, since I am still in my high school life and it's still very far ahead. I still have to go to college, university, and to get a job.
Okay. One of your peers says that in sociology, we learned that marriages are more likely to last when couples have children. If more married couples have no kids, will the divorce rates increase? In other words, is having kids in marriage, it seems like, at least to some sociologists, it's a stabilizing factor for a marriage. What do you think?
Thank you for pointing that out. But in the sociological perspective, we should also understand that when a family only consists of a mother and a father, their relationship become more intimate, although it is more prone to break. However, with the addition of a child, the relationship between the husband and wife can be less, but also the stability can rise. So maybe some parents or some people just wanted the intimacy instead of the stability.
Okay. Is there really? So do you really see this stigma associated with married couples that don't have children? And in America, I don't really see that. Is that something that's real here in Indonesia?
Yes, it's something that is very real in Indonesia, because especially in Indonesia, sometimes the worth of a woman also revolves around them having the capability to have children or not. It's also mentioned in the Bible as well, where the mother of Samuel is really stressed on about not having a child.
Have you seen the pictures of my grandkids?
Yes, you showed it in class.
Yeah, you probably if you really looked at those, you would want to have kids. Any other questions from the panelists? I think time is up. You've done a good job. You've succeeded. Thank you. Okay, we will meet over here with friends and family for photos, and then at what time? Around 2 o'clock, 1:55 or so, we will start the final thesis with Nabila. Thank you.